Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for this webinar on Customer Success as a Profit Center. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jason Whitehead, founder and CEO of Tritons. Joining me today is your other co-host, Rick Matney, a senior consultant here at Tritons as well. We're really excited to have you here and look forward to sharing some good information with you. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my background so you understand the perspective that I bring and sort of the things that I've learned over the years that might help you understand the material a little bit better. I spent the early part of my career working hands-on, doing major system implementations, working with a lot of sales, service, and marketing groups, implementing CRM, ERP, other complex systems. And then partway through, I started to switch my focus from getting systems live to making sure that systems were getting used and that they were delivering value to the organization. And really the focus became less about what the technology can do, but how the organization works with the systems and how they make sure that it's worth their investment over the long term. So my background is really both perspectives, working hands-on with technology, but really making sure that users use it and that you're getting value from it. And Rick?
Thanks, Jason. Hi, and good afternoon, everyone. My name's Rick Matney, and I have an academic background in economics and organizational management. And I've been in the IT industry and change management space for about 7 years now, where I focus on taking these new faced challenges and turning them into opportunities.
Great, thanks.
The first topic that we'll cover today is viewing customer success as a profit center. We'll take a look at how the industry has evolved and highlight the differences between operating your customer success program as a cost center versus a profit center. Then we'll move on to how to provide services that your customers will pay for. And finally, at a high level, 5 actionable steps that you can take to drive profits with your customer success efforts.
Great, thanks, Rick. So before we begin, I just want to share a little bit about Tritons for everyone out there. We're a dynamic customer success and software adoption consulting firm. We work with both the buyers and sellers of software to make sure that both are successful in getting profitable results in record time. On the seller side, we really do help organizations develop the customer success strategies, tools, and practices they need to be up and running and help their customers. And then on the customer side, we actually work with them internally to set up the software adoption programs that they need to accelerate how quickly their internal staff start using systems and to make sure that they get the value and ROI from them year after year. So that's just a little bit about us. Now let's jump right into the topic. So our first section is how to view customer success as a profit center, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means for your organization. So I think one of the things that's very interesting when you look over the history of customer success as a field and how rapidly it's accelerated, initially a lot of organizations viewed customer success initiatives as a cost center, as extra investment that they needed to make in order to reduce or eliminate churn. And they didn't view this as a possible new source of revenue or additional revenue. And we're actually seeing now as we work with clients and participate in the industry conferences and literature that more and more organizations are recognizing now that customer success can not only save on churn and turn and all that good stuff, but it actually can bring additional net new revenue to your organization. And that has a lot of implications for the organization. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that.
You know, Jason, these are exciting times in the software industry. Such of our everyday lives are impacted by and revolve around technology. Software vendors are now presented with more opportunities than ever. But before we begin to discuss the topic at hand, let's take a brief look at the evolution of the IT industry to provide some context to help everyone get up to speed with where we've gotten to and where we're at today.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really helpful, Rick. You know, here at Tritons, we've been doing this for well over a decade, and we've seen such a progression in that 10-year period of how organizations view success and view user adoption and work with their customers. It's absolutely fascinating. So let's jump in and talk about that a little bit more. So when we look at really back 10, 20 years, sort of before the year 2000, customers and IT vendors had a really different relationship. Back then, from the customer perspective, you know, IT investments were big upfront projects that required lots of money and major license costs and server build-outs, and they did a lot of the work themselves, and the customer really took on a lot of the risk. And from the vendor perspective, they used to get big money right up front, so for them, winning a new sale was absolutely key. And then we get some little additional revenue from maintenance costs and things like that. But really, back in the early days, and especially that traditional on-premise stuff, from the vendor's perspective, if they got the system live and sold to the customer, they were done, and they could go home and move on to the next new customer that they could find. And the vendors had a lot of great leverage here. And from the vendor's perspective, if they got their revenue and delivered functioning software, their job was done, and it was really, they were successful. Whether or not the customer used it, that was a different situation, but it really didn't directly impact the vendor. So then when we skip ahead and we look around, around the year 2000, and Salesforce.com came out and all these other great SaaS and cloud vendors, we started to see a dramatic shift, and the new technologies and ways of operating really shifted things. And what the business model ended up happening is that it was lower upfront licensing fees and lower upfront costs, but it was paid on that reoccurring basis. So this allowed customers to try software and afford software they otherwise couldn't, and they were able to move much, much faster than they could just on their own when they don't have to build out servers and hardware and all those great pieces. And from a customer perspective, this was great. When we looked at what happened to the vendor perspective, what this means now is that really, as a software vendor, it's absolutely essential that you keep your customers over the long term and you keep them renewing, because your revenues depend on it. And suddenly, if a customer wasn't successful and they weren't getting full value from your software, they stopped renewing and they started cutting down licenses, and they started lowering that reoccurring revenue that comes into you. And as a cloud vendor, this completely blows your business model to be losing money in the back end. So suddenly they have higher churn rate. And what we saw here is that there's now a tighter coupling between the software vendors and their customers in terms of both need to be successful, and you can't operate independently. So there was a big power shift that happened there, and it's really quite fascinating to watch how it's played out. The challenge that we're seeing here is that with this power shift and what's going on is that the software customers, they're still having trouble getting their people to use the system and getting that value and ROI that they expected from it. So they're having a huge value gap there. And for whatever reason, they haven't quite figured out how to adapt their organization to embrace the technology to get the value from it that they need. So suddenly there's this new issue here that, while it's certainly not the vendor's responsibility, it's definitely their problem that, hey, if customers aren't using it, they're not renewing. And that's where we are now. There's this huge gap both for customers and vendors, and both need to figure out how to solve it, and that's going to have some big changes and big implications. And that really, at the core, is what has really sprung this whole customer success movement in the industry that's evolving and emerging now.
Yeah, you're so right, Jason. And until vendors are able to make this fundamental mind shift, they're going to continue to struggle.
Absolutely. Okay.
Jason, initial customer success efforts, companies were still unsure of what to call this new function and exactly what it needed to do. So we saw vendors simply doing more of what they'd always done in the past and what they knew how to do. Then, as the field evolved, vendors slowly realized these early attempts weren't solving the problem, so they moved on to trying new things and coalesced around what's now known as customer success. What we saw was a lot of moving of existing staff into new departments and some job title changes, but really only minor adjustments to their roles. Typically, these new customer success managers really acted largely as account and relationship managers, with the primary goal of explaining to customers how they could get more value from their systems.
Yep, absolutely, Rick, and we're still seeing that today. We just recently delivered a training to a new customer, and so much of the conversation were about roles and responsibilities and helping the customer success team figure out what their new job was and how to go about it. What was also interesting, and what we're seeing here too, is that so many organizations, as they're doing this, they're really concentrating on their product features and functionality and trying to explain roadmaps to customers. Here's what's coming out, and here's how we can help you solve more of your business problems with the system. Here's sort of a quarterly business review, and here's the value that you're actually getting. And so much of what they're trying to do is focus on making their customers smarter about what they're achieving or what's possible. So it's really focusing on that knowledge area, which is kind of exciting and nice, but it still falls short in a big way. And that is the approach that so many organizations are taking, is that if we make our customers smarter, our customer will know what action to take and then go and do it. But the customer success teams aren't actually driving that action and explaining exactly what that needs to be. So they're still really not solving that root issue. And that is, how do you get your customers to use your software? How do you get value from it? And that's really where we are today, is so many customer success groups are still struggling to figure out how to do that and how to have the impact they need. And that sort of brings us to the shift as customer success as a profit center. And like I said, we've seen so many good faith efforts here where organizations tried to help their customers and identify where they're having issues, and they still created that big value gap. And the awareness was out there of what's possible and where you are, but what was missing is, what do we actually do about it? So Rick, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your experience there?
Organizations need to be taking actions that go beyond simply creating awareness. This is the fundamental aspect of driving value that your customers desire and will pay for. And the more successful that you can make your customers by assisting them with what they either can't or won't do for themselves, the more successful that your organization will be.
That's so true. And I think that really is where it comes down to. How do you utilize a customer success function as a profit center? Is trying to figure out what are those new services, what are those new actions, what are those new tools and methods that you can bring to your customers that help them get value that they can't do for themselves, and then how do you charge for them? Because a lot of that work that needs to happen, really shouldn't be done by the customer, but if they're unable or unwilling to do it, someone's got to get it done, and someone's got to pay for the resources that do that. And really, it should be the customer that has to do that because it's helping their organization. Okay, so let's shift now to really talking a little bit more detail around providing those services your customers will pay for and what that looks like. So I think one of the big things here is that organizations need to continue to do those knowledge creation functions of business reviews and roadmap explanation and building out and maintaining those effective relationships with your customers, but that's not enough. The next piece is really saying, how do we couple that with action? How do we work with our customers differently from the very beginning to create the activity and the education that they need to achieve success, both for the customers and for the organization as a vendor? So we've got a few ideas around that we want to share, and let's take a look at a typical approach that we've seen towards change management and user adoption with IT systems and those projects. What we see is a lot of technology-focused approach where really right up front people spend a lot of time and effort defining requirements, designing the system, building, testing, all that good stuff. And eventually they go live. And really the vast majority of the effort and budget and resources is just focused on getting everything live. And so many projects stop there. And when they do a little bit of change management or training or adoption efforts, what we see is that they're really focused on some communications and what's in it for me and trying to tell people and sell people on the system and a little bit of point and click system training, but they typically stop there. And the approach is often, well, let's just hope that after we get this live that, if you build it, they will come, people will start to use it, we'll recover some of those costs that we've already done through, efficiencies and improvements, and eventually we'll achieve whatever business goals and benefits we had hoped to have. But that's a hope-based approach because typically people stop their projects that go live. And when you do that, all you've really done is maximize your sunk costs.
Yeah, Jason, unfortunately, this approach is still very commonly used today. And it only works to drive low to moderate levels of adoption and ROI, and definitely not enough to mitigate customers from churning out.
Absolutely. And if you find yourselves taking this approach, ask yourself, has this worked in the past? And if it hasn't, we'd be very happy to help. There's a lot of things that you can and should do differently that deliver such impactful results. So now let's talk about the profitable approach to customer success. Really, what this means is you've got to deliver additional services that you haven't been in the past, and they will probably need to change of what you do before go live versus what you do after. So when you're focusing on that before go live, what are the services that you can do to prepare your customers to rapidly adopt your software and create that foundation that you need to drive that customer adoption, customer ROI, customer success. And there's many different things that happen in there. And then the important thing here is that once the system's live, you've got a lot of work to do. You've got a lot of work to accelerate adoption for your customers. You've got a lot of work to maintain high levels of adoption. And you've got a lot of work to do to help the system and adoption evolve and maintain over long term as your organization goes through a lot of changes here. And really, this is the root cause issue, which is how do you drive and sustain that effective adoption so that you get the value creation that your customers need. And these are the services that are missing from so many implementations. You need to move away from that hope users adopt approach to taking proactive action to drive and maintain adoption and really deliver and maintain that customer success so that your customers renew and expand year after year after year.
Jason, you make such a good point. Customer success is really about delivering value through your system for your customers by driving their adoption of it. Although adoption is increasingly become recognized as a responsibility of customer success, where most vendors are getting stuck is understanding that adoption is not a technology issue. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's a business issue. And lack of adoption likely has nothing at all to do with the actual software itself.
Yep, absolutely. In the training course we just delivered to a client, it took their team a while to really shift beyond technology and business outcomes to that adoption is critical path to getting the results they wanted for them and their customers. And what we also were able to show them, and what was a big aha for them, is that so much of adoption and customer success is not about the individuals themselves too, but it's a wider organizational issue, and about identifying what are those organizational barriers that are contributing to low adoption or preventing it, even when users want to. And we see that all the time as well too. And more, it really is the how do you help as a customer success organization get your clients to address some of their organizational challenges that have probably been lingering out there for quite a while that prevent them from being successful with your system.
Yeah, it's really not about the software, it's about the fleshware. And there's no one piece of functionality that you can build in your system that will solve your customers' adoption issues. And simply traditional onboarding, training, and with them communications aren't enough anymore.
Absolutely.
Really, the critical path to success is driving adoption. And to increase your customers' ROI from your IT solution, you need to drive and sustain effective adoption. Without adoption, there's no business value, and without business value, there's no renewals.
Yep, that's so key. In fact, most people are shocked when we share with them. We had one client that actually came to us and they said, we need help. Adoption is 80% of our issue. The technology is only 20%, and we really don't know what to do here, but we've struggled in the past and we've never been successful with it, so we need to do something different this time. And it's exciting to see how many organizations are having that aha that we need to improve in this adoption and success and outcomes area. So with that as a backdrop, let's jump into what are some things we can actually do. Okay, so far we've talked about the need for actionable services and to fill that value gap and to solve the adoption problems so you get the ROI for your customers. And really the idea that profitable customer success means you need to help do and deliver the services for the things that your customers can't or won't do for themselves. So now we want to walk you through 5 big steps that help you can create a profitable customer success practice. So one of the first ones right out of the gate here is you need to get your executives on board. You need to show them that customer success team and your practice can be a profit center. It can be a new source of revenue. And really, you need to have some P&L and profit and loss responsibility for this and act accordingly. This is going to be a big shift for a lot of executives who may think of your customer success group as a cost center or as an extension of technical support, but you need to get them on board first. What we have also found is that when you're able to do that and you can show them the direct value that your practice can provide, you can show the impact to the bottom line and how it can help them both in the short term in terms of additional revenue, but over the long term of reducing churn and protecting revenues that have been sold from other projects, they can get on board pretty quickly. So start there and make sure you've got a very clear and compelling business case and that you've engaged your executives in a way that gets them supportive of customer success as a profit center.
You're so right, Jason. You need to get the CEO and other executives on board with seeing the direct value that your CSM practice can provide.
Absolutely. The next piece, once you've got them on board, is to make sure that you can develop profitable service offerings. When we work with clients, we help them map out and understand their customer base, and it always comes up they have different needs. And what they recognize is that there's no one-size-fits-all service. They need to figure out what's going to be there. And then the key piece is making sure that they structure and staff their services in a way that can be profitable. And this really is challenging because it's very easy to say we need to do all of this stuff to make our customers successful. You can do a lot of things, but you can spend a lot of money doing things that won't have a return. So making sure that the services you create are profitable is absolutely essential. Rick, why don't you take the next one?
Thanks, Jason. And we don't advise that you take a one-size-fits-all approach to customer success. We really advocate for the need to segment your customers and offer different levels of service to meet their different needs. Consider this, about 80% of your company's revenue will come from about 20% of your existing customers. Mm-hmm. With this in mind, it's so critical to understand the correct level of touch that you should provide for each customer segment based on the value that they provide to your organization. Yeah. So let's take a look at what that might look like. For your smaller customers that can't afford as much and don't have as complex needs, you should consider offering smaller, cheaper, and simpler success services. For example, Tier 1 services should incorporate one-to-many type self-service offerings. These would largely consist of automated tools such as emails, videos, drip campaigns, webinars, etc., where you could utilize an application like Amity's to provide these types of services in a scalable and cost-effective manner.
Yeah, absolutely. And the important thing to remember about that too is just because you have tools and videos and emails and self-service, you still need the right content and content that will drive adoption and ROI. When we were working with a customer recently, their natural inclination and impulse was to go through and do what they've always done before without recognizing it wasn't going to drive that action that would result in improved adoption and improved results. So we worked with them to help show them, hey, you need to get this content right. It can't be what you've always done before. It can't be more training, can't be more with them, but it has to really focus on accelerating that adoption curve.
Right. And moving up to higher touch points are tier 2 and tier 3 services, which are more of a professional service to drive adoption, similar to what a company like Tritones would offer clients. For your larger customers that are spending a large amount of money with you, it's likely that they'll have more complexities and thus will need more support to effectively drive user adoption. However, these are the customers that are willing to spend the money for it and to ensure their investments in your IT solution.
Yeah, absolutely. We find the customers that are doing the major projects, 20, 40, 50, $100 million projects, they've got a lot of skin in the game and a lot of risk there. Anything that they can do to drive adoption and lower their risk is pretty key, and they recognize the importance and the value of that. So the third piece that makes a lot of sense is you need to charge for your services. And it's important that you get the market value for these services, but also recognize that the way you charge for them and the way you account for them may be very, very different depending on the service level. So for example, with a lot of the tier 1 licenses, sort of that lower level, low touch kind of self-service approach, many organizations would not pay separately for that. But if it's included into a license cost and a license fee, it's pretty easy to get them to recognize the value. It's the number's the number. So for that to be effective as a profitable customer success center, you need to make sure that your finance department is allocating a certain portion of a license fee to the revenue that really should reflect the customer success services that you're delivering. So that's very important. And then as you move up the chain where your organizations may need more custom support and custom customer success services and have higher needs and a white glove service, that typically would be some version of a fee-for-service event in a professional service, very similar to other professional services you're probably offering, from implementation services or technical professional services, whatever it may be. And those would most likely be a separate line item you would sell to your customers as you go forward.
Yeah, in order to get all of this to work, you need to be able to sell these services to your customers, which begins with the marketing process. You need to involve your marketing team early in the process to create messaging around these new customer success services that will really highlight the value they provide to your customers.
Yeah, and an important thing there too is that you may need to market and position these services differently for new customers and existing customers. For new customers, it typically is a bit easier, both because they likely had experiences with customer success services from other vendors and their other applications that they use, but also they're looking for how do they do business with your organization, what do you bring, and you can guide them through that entire process. With existing customers, they can be a bit more challenged. They have expectations around the level of service that they receive. They have expectations around the challenges and issues that they've done and how the relationships evolved. And there are a variety of things you can do there, from grandfathering in select customers for a select service level, figuring out how you might transition them over time and move them along. A lot of different approaches, but you do need to recognize that you will need to market to the two different groups and probably have to do it in a slightly different way.
And finally, in order for these services to be effective, you need to also make sure that you involve your sales teams.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different ways you can do this as well too. You can make this a new item that your current sales staff needs to sell as part of their services and software packages. You can create new sales team all the way through. But the important thing is that someone's got to have that responsibility for selling these services, and they must be incentivized and have their compensation adjusted accordingly. And making sure if you do have your existing sales staff be responsible for selling customer success services, making sure that they have the right mix of software and services included in each of their compensation plans. Because what you see so often with sales folks is they're very focused on what's in their comp plan, and if you don't include this in here, they will likely not sell your customer success services as strong as they otherwise could or should. Okay.
And just to sum all this up, in order to achieve profits through your customer success function, you really need to get a few things figured out. And these include identifying what services that your customers need to drive adoption and realize value from your solution, how to develop these services in a repeatable and scalable way, and how to sell and deliver these new customer success services in a cost and effective and profitable manner for your organization.
Yep, and we hear all the time, this sounds really complex. I'm like, well, yes, it is, but we're here to help, and we've done this many times. We can guide organizations through it. We're happy to help you. So if this sounds like a challenge that you're struggling with, please give us a call and let us see how we can help you. So thank you all for joining us today. We hope this has been helpful. Just to let you know a little bit, if you still have questions, we are here to help. Tritons does have a variety of customer success and accelerated user adoption software offerings. I encourage you to go to our website. We have a full complement of customer success and software adoption training classes available, as well as consulting packages. And we've got predefined service offerings that we can help you move very, very quickly. If you're at the beginning of a customer success effort, partway through, or you've got one live and you want to optimize it, we do have packages available. And we're also very flexible to work with and can customize something to meet your needs. So I encourage you to come to our website and check it out. And if you're a software vendor out there, we also partner with vendors to help deliver success services with them to fill some of those critical skill and capacity gaps that are often missing. So if you have questions, please give us a call. We hope you will join us for a future webinar or check out any of our training services as well, including our online training service at tritonsacademy.com. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.